Well done. Your lords and masters.
Right, hello and welcome to day 10 of the Genesis of Androzani Advent Calendar for 2020. We are here with someone who's never been on the channel, but if you are on our Twitter, you will have seen him pop up many a time, and that is Will Maddox.
Yep, aka Maddox Productions 1 here on YouTube, or on Twitter it's at your boy Maddox, but you know.
Yeah.
I'm I'm like two different people. On YouTube it's a lot more I'm a lot more like not formal, but you know what I mean. But it's like I'm insane on Twitter and like more calm on YouTube. So
it's because with YouTube you have to like take time to construct and think about what you're doing, whereas on Twitter you can just sort of blurt out thoughts you have. Right?
Yeah, but still, the level I take it to sometimes. I'm quite a controversial figure, I dare say.
I would say you're quite an oddity. Actually, you're quite an oddity in terms of the fan spectrum. You're very different to everyone else, I would say.
Yeah, not to like bang on about myself, but you know, I am introducing myself. But yeah, like, should I like say what my general like sort of stance on Doctor Who is
without going into the main topic if you want, because obviously I want you to do that after.
Okay. So I am mostly like God, where do I begin? So like I am pretty enthusiastic about mostly 60s and 70s Who, but I do enjoy Russell T Davies era as well. In fact, I think that's like the pinnacle of the revival. I am quite infamous. I am quite infamously outspoken about everything that's come out since Russell T Davies, especially Moffat. So, yeah, if anyone doesn't like Moffat bashing, you know, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But yes.
Although you've had a little bit of a resurgence with the Capaldi era, just to a degree, recently.
Yeah. I think the Capaldi era has been. I've been warming on it, but you know, yeah. Still,
I can't say that. I watched Listen last night and absolutely hated it. So there you go.
Oh yeah, Listen's not good. But...
Although there is that one really funny joke about Where's Wally.
oh yeah.
Anyway.
Dig a well, you clever boy.
I think that
wasn't the line. But...
I think the first time I properly noticed you was when you did like the action figure like summation of each Doctor's era. That was brilliant.
Oh yeah. Hello, you clever boy. I'm Clara.
Yeah. Oh no, Doctor! It's awful.
Oh yeah.
This is all about hard hitting drama. I'm a war veteran.
I'm a working class girl. This is very serious drama. Sex jokes.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. But yes.
Sorry to your viewers who don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh, it's great. They'll interpret it in a certain way.
Right.
That's the idea. Anyway, so that's who you are. And what we're going to be doing in this video, because obviously they won't know what it is, and if they're viewing it as it comes out, because it's an advent calendar. What we're going to be talking about is we're going to be discussing the Time War, and the reason why is because I recently rewatched your Doctor's ranking video, and when you got to Christopher Eccleston, you said something along the lines of you not liking the concept around the Time War, and I have heard this mentioned before. I think in Stu Bagfall's Day of the Doctor review, he also said he didn't like the Time War as a concept, and so I thought it would be interesting to get you on here to discuss that, because even though I have some of my... I do have some personal grievances with how it's been used in certain contexts, especially outside of the creator's vision, which I'm sure we'll get into. As a whole, I would say the Time War and what comes of it has produced what I would say is probably some of my favourite character drama in the show. So I think it will be interesting to hear what you have to say about it. So why don't you begin and explain why you're not a big fan of the Time War as a concept?
Yeah, okay. Because, like, I'm in very... It's not like I'm, like, completely despising the idea of the Time War. It's just I'm very mixed on it. I do like the character drama that springs from it. I think, like, so more specifically Eccleston, I think the character drama with him makes the idea worth it.
I think the most obvious episodes there would be Dalek and Bad Wolf Parting the Ways, obviously because the Daleks are in it.
Yeah.
But obviously that's, with Eccleston, that's where a lot of it comes from. And obviously I think the first few episodes of Series 1 as well, it comes in, like End of the World is one of them. Is when we actually find out what it is. It's when it's sort of introduced.
Yeah, and it gives 9 quite a lot of moments of character growth. So I dig it for him. And for Tennant, sometimes it gets a bit much, but
can you think of a specific? Do you have a specific example with Tennant that you're not a big fan?
Like there are some times where he will just bring up the Time War. That's a bit, or not really that he will explicitly mention it, but it sort of like glorifies how lonely and stuff like in Voyage of the Damned when he loses Astrid. Like that's not explicitly Time War centric, but it's when he loses her, it's like, wow, I'm so alone, and he's like that epic shot of him walking through the explosions and like it's like the subtext is there.
Isn't the thing of like he gets carried by the angels, and it's almost like Russell was doubling down on what he did in Last of the Time Lords, so all the people that didn't like the Jesus stuff, he's just like, look at him, he's being carried by angels above.
He should have kept going. Should have had, like, Partners in Crime should have just kept going with that.
Yeah.
Oh. But yeah, for character drama, it's pretty good. The idea itself, it is a bit fanficky, but like, what's Doctor Who's biggest enemy? The Daleks. His people?
I mean, to be fair, pretty much most things since the 80s have been very fanficky in Doctor Who, I would say. It's sort of become a bit of a fan fiction show, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's true. And, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because, Daleks versus Cybermen is also kind of a fanficky idea, and that was ridiculously fun.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like, if we are limited to just the Russell era, I'm down for the Time War. Like, I'd give it a thumbs up. Should we explore our thoughts on Gallifrey as a planet and as a society, and how the Time War was a good idea?
Yeah. So because one of the things that the Time War does in the Russell era is by removing Gallifrey, he then got to paint it in a new light. So it created a lot more mystery around it, and that's why, even though a lot of people hate the end of time, the fact that the Time Lords are these sort of almost fantasy-like creature beings, for someone who hasn't seen Classic Who, that's believable because you don't know, and the way the Doctor's built up Gallifrey in the new series up to that point, it kind of fits, if you get what I'm saying, because Gallifrey in the new series up to that point it's very fantasy. It's not the old political, thing that it became. If that makes sense.
That's fair. Because it's going to go slightly off topic because I'm going to delve into Classic Who, but this is like a kind of recent realization for me, but I kind of view Gallifrey as thematically the opposite of what Doctor Who is about. And like, not that that's a bad thing. I think it proves a good point in like the Troughton and Pertwee era. Because
but that's the thing, because like my favorite Doctor Who story is the War Games, and that's when Gallifrey's kind of introduced, even though it's not named. But it's when the Time Lords are introduced properly.
Yeah.
But it's like it instantly, once you get past the War Games, it almost completely changes. Like, after that point, like, Gallifrey is never the same as it was again in the War Games. It never had the same aura. I mean, like, because I talked about the Russell era making the Time Lords a bit more sort of, like, fantasy god-like creatures, but that's not even the same as what they were in the War Games at all. Like, it's
more...
It's interesting how they completely changed the Time Lords straight away in the 70s, you know?
Yeah. But like, when I say Gallifrey is thematically the opposite of like Doctor Who, because Doctor Who is, you know, the spirit of adventure and let's anywhere and any when, and the Doctor's like a thrill seeker. And in the War Games, we reveal that he was bored. And when we go to Gallifrey, they kind of establish that, you know, even though they have all these powers, it's a very boring place.
Yeah, that's the whole point, right? You know?
Yeah, and that's quite brilliant, and they are literally so the opposite of the show Spirit of Adventure,
and you can see why. You can see why he ran away from Gallifrey, because he was bored of it. You know,
and they are so clearly the opposite of the show Spirit of Adventure that they literally limit where we can go for a few years.
Yeah,
and that's actually quite a genius idea. I don't know if it was an intentional one. Like, it was probably more for like budgeted reasons why they did the Earthbound arc. But
I mean, either way, we got season 7, which I'm happy about. So
yeah, season 7 is good, perfect. I don't know why I said good. It's more than good. It's great.
I did a marathon of that on my channel recently, where I watched all 4 stories over 2 days, and it was beautiful.
They're all good, especially. Well, I think Silurians. Oh, we're going to go off topic again, but like, I think Silurians is the weakest of the 3. But
really,
you know,
it's actually 4 stories, not 3 stories. Because remember, Spearhead, Silurians, Ambassadors, Inferno is season 7.
Yeah, I think Silurians is the weakest of the 4.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's because
it's like I don't really, because like the 3 stories that aren't Inferno for me are all on par, so I don't really mind that opinion at all.
Yeah, I think it's just because I've grown kind of jaded to the idea of the Silurians, but you know, I know that's not really.
Would you say that's
most?
Would you say that's at the fault of other stories, or is it to do with that story?
I do think the Silurians, Doctor Who and the Silurians, it could have handled its idea a bit better, but that is accentuated by the following stories, because you know, you've got like one good Silurian and then like a lot of the others are warmongering. It's like you could have more like passive peace seeking Silurians.
Well, because then after that, you get the Sea Devils, which is just a pulp version of that, and it has the Master in it. And then you've got the Warriors of the Deep, which is Warriors of the Deep. And then you've got bloody Hungry Earth Cold Blood, which is just the Silurians again, but shit.
Yeah, where they're still warmongering, but they're more fucking taunting about it. They're like, "Yes, I stole your son," or like whatever.
And they're lizards that have tongues that attack you.
Yeah.
Anyway, get back to Gallifrey and the Time War. We've got a massive tangent here.
Yeah, apologies for that. But like, yeah, I think the Time Lords, they do start taking a dip in the Pertwee era. I do like that they just occasionally pop in and like, here's a mission, Doctor. It could be more mysterious. I like how Genesis had.
Yeah, Genesis the Daleks. I was going to say that's probably my favorite equivalent to that. I also I mean, their involvement in the Three Doctors is kind of just there to be necessary. It's more about Omega. But with Genesis the Daleks, I do agree that the whole mission to kill the Daleks from birth is brilliant. And funnily enough, you mentioned that because Russell T Davies has said that Genesis of the Daleks is kind of his inspiration for the Time War. He's, in his mind, in the canon, that's where it all begins, and it ripple effects all the way through to when you actually get the Time War.
Yeah, that's a pretty good retroactive addition there. I think because I'm not opposed to the like Pertwee cameos in theory, but I do think they should have gone the more mysterious route that Genesis does. Like maybe in the Three Doctors, it should have been more like, because in the Three Doctors, like, oh no, our power's going. But but I don't. They could be more mysterious and, you know, like they were in the War Games. But I don't think Classic Who really starts taking a dip with Gallifrey until The Deadly Assassin.
Oh yeah, that's your hot take, isn't it? The Deadly Assassin.
Yeah, because I'm typically on board. Like, when it comes to Classic Who, I don't really have many, like, stories that I'd call overrated. I'm pretty much a whore for Classic Who. If there's like a fan favorite story, I'm actually
kind of the same. There's only a couple, I would say, in my mind. Most of it I think is pretty fairly rated.
Yeah, but I think The Deadly Assassin is one of those few that's oh no.
Yeah, that's your one. You know what my one is?
What?
The Sea Devils.
Which one? Oh, I like the Sea Devils.
I mean, I like the Sea Devils as well, but I don't think it's like if you look at the 2014 poll, it's in like the top 20 or top 30. I think that's ridiculous.
I don't really know. I definitely have it like high, but I don't know if I'd have it that high.
I think it's a fun story, but I don't know if it qualifies as like, you know, one of the all-time classics. Because it's the same plot as the Silurians, but without any of the rich subtext, and it's fun because it has the Master and it has all those, you know, boats, and it has the scene with all the bombs and the Sonic, and and the sword fight obviously is great. It's very, very fun, but I don't know.
I do actually, hot take. I do actually kind of prefer it to Silurians, but only because of Roger Delgado.
He is the best part. Definitely is the best part, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh god, if the Master wasn't in that story, I don't even know what I'd think of it.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot more generic without the Master.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll get back on topic.
Yeah.
So I know you don't like the Deadly Assassin, but I just want to try and like veer us into the like specifically the Time War part of it.
Yeah, because you have stories like that and the Invasion of Time, which is a hot mess, and Infinity, which, like, yeah, they do follow up, like they do successfully depict Gallifrey as boring, but not in the good way. Because the thing about,
well, I mean, because obviously you got Arc of Infinity as well, and you got the Trial of a Time Lord, which is the other big Gallifrey story. I suppose the Five Doctors as well is also there too.
Yeah, because it's like Gallifrey, it is boring, but it's also supposed to have a level of mystique about it, and those stories forget that bit and just make it boring.
Yeah, because the thing with the Five Doctors is that when they're traveling on Gallifrey, it's just some like really boring English fields. Whereas when you hear, you know, in Gridlock, when you hear the Doctor describing, he's like, that red grass and the sun would rise and the trees would ring silver, you know, and it sounds like this great place, and then you watch the Five Doctors.
Oh, you should have seen it, Martha.
I know, and it sounds like this great place, and then you watch the Five Doctors, it's just a bunch of fields.
But yeah, I do think, because, you know, Gallifrey became overly familiar and, you know, really became so ordinary that, yeah, I do think something like the Time War was ultimately very necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does, it gets rid of the Time Lords, which good, because they suck, and B, it does introduce a level of mystique back into the show, and you know,
and it's a launch pad for all the character drama, because obviously with Davies, he went for a much more intense drama style to his version of the show that had been seen before.
Yeah,
and that wasn't.
Some would describe it soap opera.
Yep, they would. But it basically allows a starting point for the storytelling. You can basically base it off that and trickle it all from there, and then, you know, the Doctor's grief over the Time War then bleeds into all the relationships he has with all the characters that he meets in the Davies era, and I love that. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, I think series 1 to 4 handle the Time War pretty well. Because when it comes to the end of time, I don't mind it. I used to hate it when it came out. I was like, oh god, this story's ridiculous. I have softened on it a lot. I've become more on board with like the campy Skeletor master. Like it's still not like a top tier story for me, but I can get down with it.
Remember me trying to defend remember me trying to defend it in the worst stories video in the live stream, and I almost got it out of the bottom 20 on a coin flip. I was so close.
It doesn't deserve to be that low.
Yeah, but it
has its dodgy moments, but come on.
I was in a live stream with people that absolutely hate it, so I was lucky that I almost got it out.
Yeah, End of Time for the Time War. I think what I prefer about like series 1 to 4 is that the major villains, like the series finale villains, they are all from they all also fought in the Time War, but they're not directly from it. There's like some distance there, like time has passed for them as it has for the Doctor.
Well, what I like about it is that obviously they are connected to the Time War, but they are their own characters as well. Like you've got obviously the Emperor Dalek, and you've got the Cult of Skaro, and you've got Davros, and you've got the Master, and it's separate to the Time War, but they're all part of it. You know?
Yeah. But yeah, I like that there is some distance, like between the Time War and them. Like they talk about, oh, do you remember the Time War? Like as if you could forget the Time War, but like, do you remember the Time War and the flim-flammies of the flim-flammy blew up the thingy-majig?
Yeah,
like,
of course.
All that oblique.
The fall of Arcadia.
The doors of the Nightmare Child.
Yeah. The moment.
Crap, what else? He goes on like a big tangent in the end of the Horde of Travesties.
That's right.
Could have been King.
It's like he's just naming all the Big Finish box sets.
Oh no. Oh no.
So I think where the Time War starts to slip in the show for me, it comes down to the fact that Russell T Davies chose to leave, and that meant that Moffat was given the burden of having to still have it in the show. And to be fair to him, for quite a lot of the Smith era, he does shake it off. Like he does sort of not, like he basically, the whole of series 5, it's basically the Doctor just ignoring it outright. Like he just completely, there's that one scene in The Beast Below when he briefly says it to Amy or something, and the whole thing of his character is like, he's off in this fairy tale land, and the Time War doesn't exist anymore. And then basically what happens is that when you get around series 7-ish, is when the 50th is coming up, and that all has to come back. And then you get Dave the Doctor, and then that's when it really starts to like go downhill for me. Not that I necessarily hate the episode, but what I don't like about it is the fact that Moffat had to bring Gallifrey back into the show to sort of have like a happy ending for the 50th. He had to retcon it so that the Doctor never actually destroyed the planet itself. And for me, that takes away a lot of the sting, because I find the character drama in the Davies era a lot more compelling with the idea that the Doctor actually did do it, whereas now it's the Doctor thought he did it but didn't, and it's not the same. And then on top of that, it's like, well,
I agree.
It's like, well, if you're going to do this retcon, there better be a purpose for it. And then what we got as a result was Hellbent and the Timeless Children. So,
yeah,
I don't think it was a good trade.
But yeah, quickly going back to the end of time for a bit. Sorry about
Sure,
that.
sure.
But I do agree. It's just I think I'd better clarify that my problem with the end of time is like because Rassilon comes directly from the Time War, that we actually get a glimpse of it. I think that kind of like ruins the mystique a little, because I would prefer to just not see it. But you know, I do get why he did that, because you know it's the end of his era, and you know he might as well like give this big dramatic conclusion to the Time War arc as far as he was aware.
It was kind of
So
like the whole conflict in part 2 with the Master, the Doctor, and Rassilon. It was kind of meant to be. It's a sort of, you're almost like binoculars into the Time War. You're seeing like a fragment of it, of the conflict. I think that's what it was kind of meant to be. And it's like he was like, I want to bring I want to bring what was in the Time War to the present and show you what it was like. And then obviously he had to send it back as well, because then you know that would have just completely, the continuity would have been bloody all over the place at that point. But yeah, I think that was the idea. Yeah. But it definitely was like very last minute, because I think I read somewhere that originally the David Tennant's final story was going to be what Asylum of the Daleks ended up being, or something like that, which would have been really weird. It obviously would have been a lot different, because obviously Asylum was written by Stephen Moffat and it had Clara in it and all the Amy and Rory stuff. But the whole Dalek Asylum thing was originally going to be, that was going to be the last story, and then he changed his mind when one of his friends emailed him saying, well, why don't you have the Time Lords in it? And that's what he did.
Huh, I see.
Yeah.
I'm very mixed on like how the End of Time handles it. Like I get why it's like that, but at the same time, but you know, But RTD, I think he handles it fairly well, and you know, rightfully so, because it is his concept.
Absolutely.
Moffat. Even like, I have problems with Series 6 and Series 7. Pretty big gaping problems.
As do I.
But kudos to them. Kudos to them and Series 5. They steer the hell clear of the Time War, and I'm happy for that. They realize that, because with Russell, it feels so conclusive. Like, you know, not like his angst is over. He can have moments like The Beast Below, like The Doctor's Wife, where he's like sad about being the last one, and how I wish I could change things, Amy. But like I'm glad that at that time Moffat kind of realized that, like, okay, it's a thing, but like maybe we should. The show is more than the Time War.
It was kind of going off what you were saying before about Gallifrey kind of being the antithesis of what the show is, and therefore him moving on from the Time War and doing something new is kind of what you should do, right, on paper.
Yeah, and you know, even though the Silence arc is a bit crappy, that does
went bloody nowhere.
It does at the time, like Series 6 and 5 and stuff. It does move on. It's not really, at that time, Gallifrey-centric. Day of the Doctor comes along, and Day of the Doctor, it's... At the time when it aired, it was everything I wanted it to be. I was like, wow, this truly is a celebration of New Who, and it's so epic.
I was the same. I was sucked in by it. I was like, this is so much fun. And it still is fun for me. I still have fun watching it as like a fun little multi-Doctor story. It's just once you get to the bit where they bring Gallifrey back, I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah, at the time, I internalized that. I was like, that's a weird decision. Okay, I just roll with it. Because at the time, that Moffat's thing is... something good will come of this in the future.
Yeah, of course. So, hindsight's very powerful, because I remember when Gallifrey came back, I turned to my friend and said, oh my god, we've waited so long for this, and finally this thing we've heard about in all these stories is going to be back, and then we're going to see it and what's going to be like, and then 2 years later we got Hellbent, and
yeah, because you know, the New Who did such a good job of like mystifying the place again.
Absolutely, yeah.
When they do bring back Gallifrey, you're like, oh, holy shit! If they're bringing it back, what will they do with it? Will it be like War Games-esque, godlike characters again? And in Time of the Doctor, it sort of is. Like, they are off-screen and shadowy, and we don't see them, and it's kind of like they give the Doctor regeneration, which is a corny
because they love him. Because they love him.
That is corny, but like they are kind of shadowy and godlike in that, and that's sort of there. Even though I hate the fact that Day of the Doctor had to do that, because it does. I know some people say, but it doesn't undermine the drama. But like, he just thought he did. I'm really sick. This was probably the first instance of this, but it's like definitely become a repeated trend with like the Timeless Child and definitely Big Finish. I'm really sick of the Doctor's characterization being dictated by memory wipes.
McGann's like that all the time.
It's so artificial. It's so. It's not good.
I don't think that the drama in hindsight in the Davies era works as well if you have the context of it was all a misunderstanding. He didn't actually do it. He just thought he did. And God, it just works so much better if it's him. He actually was like this is my biggest problem, because I love John Hurt and I love the way he plays the Doctor, and I think as a general Doctor that's not involved with the Time War, I think he's brilliant and so much fun. But the main problem I have with the War Doctor is that he isn't the monster that we thought that the War Doctor would be. The way it's built up in an episode like Dalek, where it's like, I watched it happen, I made it happen. And
I was the oncoming storm.
Yeah. And then you see Day of the Doctor and you listen to the Big Finish, and he's just this really charming, lovely old man that doesn't want to do it, and he never does. And
he amounts to, I'm not the Doctor. And then Rose is like, not Rose, but the moment, is like, yes, you are, though. And he's like, okay. And that's pretty much it.
I know, exactly. And it's annoying, because it's like, I find the whole idea that Davies put in there about this man, this Doctor, that we hold to a sort of moral standard. It's going off what Terrence Dicks said about never cruel, never cowardly, and it's actually something that Davies himself doesn't like. The fact that he created a storyline where the Doctor that we knew from Classic Who was pushed to the point where he had to be cruel and he had to be cowardly. He had to do something that was completely against his character, and the fact that this Time War was so messed up and brutal, and it pushed him to the absolute extreme that he did something that he absolutely wouldn't do. It was the whole point of it was that he was completely pushed to that limit, and then the whole grief coming off it is the fact that he was pushed that far. And I like that, because it makes the character interesting. The fact that the Doctor, even though we see him in a certain way, he has the capability in the most extreme circumstances to be pushed to the limit and committing genocide, which it caps off that whole thing that was set up in Genesis of the Daleks. Do I have the right? The fact that he has a point where he actually does what he didn't do in Genesis of the Daleks. It's so interesting. And then the fact that Moffat changed it so that never even happened. It's just, it's so disappointing for me.
I never actually thought of it like that before. And yeah, that does piss me off.
It just really cuts off all the sting from that really awesome idea, and it's all a misunderstanding. Oh, the nanogenes, it was all a misunderstanding. Everybody lives. It's like, oh god.
And yeah, it just further demystifies the time, because the Time War is an idea that does work best in not exposition, but like as a described thing. Mm-hmm. It's when you say the words Time War, you can't really. When you see things like the End of Time and Day of the Doctor and like some Big Finish sets, which depict it like no matter how they're going to depict it, it's going to be disappointing, because your mind just runs away with you, because the concept is so naturally grandiose. And yeah, and I, respect to John Hurt, but it should have been McGann. It just should have been, because going back to that thing of like the Doctor being pushed to the extreme, I much prefer the idea of the Eighth Doctor, this, charming, hopeless romantic, as, the cliche description of him is, being like gradually pushed into a like really like intense, unforgiving scenario. It's kind of like Caves of Androzani in that respect.
Absolutely,
like the Fifth Doctor. And like, I much prefer that idea. It's so much more investing than.
And also, what's crazy? What's so crazy is that the whole reason Moffat decided to cast John Hurt. Obviously, Christopher Eccleston said no, and then the whole reason he decided to cast John Hurt instead of doing McGann is the reason he gives is I couldn't see McGann doing it. But then in Day of the Doctor, John Hurt doesn't even do it anyway. So what was the point?
Yeah. Plus, Moffat's favourite Doctor is Davison. The nice Doctor who is pushed to doing, not a horrible thing, but is pushed to being his most courageous, badass self. I mean, that's not much in Davison standards, but like... But, like, yeah, like, the fact that he's a fan of, a nice Doctor being pushed to the extreme, but then can't see that with McGann, it's weird.
It is weird.
Yeah. And, because Big Finish, they retroactively tried, not retroactively, but, like, before Day of the Doctor, they were sort of building to that. I don't know how much of the Eighth Doctor audios you've heard.
Okay, so I've listened to all of Charlie and half of Lucy, and I haven't gotten any past that, but I am aware that Dark Eyes was meant to be what led into the Time War, but then they had to change it because of Night of the Doctor, and they ended up doing, Doom Coalition and Ravenous, Stranded, Time War, and all that.
Yeah, and... Because, like, the end of the Lucy Miller stuff happens. It's quite brutal and intense. I won't spoil it. And Dark Eyes, it builds.
I mean, I'm gonna have to win Lotto and sell a Lamborghini to buy the Lucy Miller stuff that I haven't listened to. It's so expensive.
But it's like pushing the Eighth Doctor to that point. And then Night of the Doctor happens, and it's all like, nope, he doesn't want to do it. He's too... I was going to say he's too pussy, but, And that's just... Because then, after that, Big Finish sort of, like, have to go back and, like, with following Dark Eyes box sets and Doom Coalition, they have to calm the Eighth Doctor down again, and it's awkward.
It's like a false start.
And... Yeah, like, I find that more interesting than the War Doctor, who is he's bred for the purpose of fighting, but then it turns out he doesn't want to do it, or something.
Yeah, it's just...
I don't find the War Doctor a very interesting incarnation.
I feel like it would have been so much better if in Day of the Doctor, and obviously, the big argument against this would be, well, then why did you bring the Time War into it in the first place, which is fair, but what I would have done, if I was to redo Day of the Doctor, like, with the same kind of plot, what I would do is I would have had it where, and I think I've heard Stu Bagwell say something a bit similar to this as well, is that the moment where Clara is like, look at all these children crying, the way I would have had it is the Doctor explains to her why he can't save them.
Why he had to do it.
Yeah.
I do like that video.
And...
of Stu Bagwell.
Yeah, and the fact that it's like the scene where they're all about to push the button together, it's like, now we're here together to do it with you. It's like, I think that would have been really cool, like the bittersweet ending of it's now him coming to the terms of, like, this is where, the 11th Doctor, all the grief of the Time War ends, because he comes full circle and he sort of realizes that I know why I made the decision and I can't live with regret, and then he has to move on from that, and they all push the button, and from there the Doctor and the Time War and all that grief ends, I feel like that would have been a really good way to do it, but instead they brought back Gallifrey, and it's just...
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, I personally just wouldn't have done anything with Gallifrey for the 50th, but,
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, it's really weird.
I mean,
it's really weird.
Yeah,
that
you could have just had like a really fun multi-Doctor story with McGann, Tennant, and Matt Smith. You know?
Yeah, and it's really weird that Moffat spent like all of Matt Smith's era doing, pretty original ideas, and then the 50th comes along. It's like, let's do the Time War again. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue that maybe he just wanted to revisit that as a celebratory idea, but I don't know.
I think it's just coming full circle. It's like he wanted Billie Piper to be in it, and he also, it's like, well, we need to round off what Russell set up, and then there's also the like thing of like bringing Tennant into it, and it's a natural storytelling point, I suppose, because you get that whole scene in prison where they're talking about like how many children died that day, and it's like, I can't even remember, blah blah blah.
Yeah. Tennant and Smith are really, and John Hurt. Their interaction and chemistry is really good. So.
I think it's a really fun multi-Doctor story. I actually really enjoyed that part of it. It's just the Gallifrey coming back thing that I'm like, why? Also, the unit Zygon plot's goes a bit south.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the Queen Elizabeth stuff's funny, but once it actually becomes a Zygon plot, it's like, ugh.
Yeah, it's a shame. In retrospect, that special has just become really mediocre for me. I still enjoy it for the Doctors, but but then Time of the Doctor happens and it's crap. And
yeah, I can't stand it. And so
people give that story way too much credit.
Oh yeah, it's pretentious waffle, and all the villains are terrible. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so
Hellbent.
Yeah, because after Day of the Doctor, we get Hellbent, and
yeah, there are like some outside canon reasons for Hellbent being as disappointing as it is, because Moffat kind of bigged it up in interviews as, oh yes, it's the mission. I don't know why I'm doing the Matt Smith impression, but oh yes, it's the mission for the next 50 years to search for Gallifrey. This is chapter 2 of the Doctor's life, because we have finished chapter 1. That's so like,
it's so pretentious.
Tooting.
It's so pretentious. Yeah. And then it's funny because you watch the interview he did with Crystal D. He's like, I'm not going to wait 50 years. I'll just do it now. But then they go there, and it's not even about Gallifrey. It's about Clara. And the hybrid! The hybrid!
I'm pretty infamous for trashing Series 9. I have calmed on it this year. I've calmed down a bit, but it's still not that good. Because, as I said, I'm not the biggest fan of Gallifrey or it being brought back, but fine. If we're gonna bring it back, let's bring it back for like actual plot, like for actual reasons. Actually, like if you're gonna go to the edit of retconning an at the time 8-year-old arc or 10-year-old arc, do it for a reason. He doesn't have a good reason.
No, it's just background scenery.
Because why does the hybrid prophecy have to be set on Gallifrey? Why?
I don't know.
What is?
I don't know.
It's only that I feel like it's only there for clickbait because yes, we're going back to the Doctor's origins and that there was a secret there. Tune in to find out, longtime fans.
Yeah, well, I mean, it turns out that once again, Clara's relationship with the Doctor is such an important part of history.
And I don't like Clara. I know you don't like Clara either.
No.
So sidelining Gallifrey for I think Hellbent only really works if you like Clara. And if you're
for sure.
really invested in her.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
And the story is not at all tailored to suit people who don't like, because everything in the plot links back to her. The
only other way you could like Hellbent is if you're not paying attention to the narrative and you're only enjoying like the visuals and the sound and the actors.
Or if you're if you're like a hardcore Capaldi stan who came in from the thick of it and doesn't really care. Because like we didn't listen.
I would say that Thick of It fans probably hate Series 9 because he stops being like Malcolm Tucker then.
Yeah, that's why I hated Series 9 at first.
Yeah.
Then I became more intelligent about why I hated it. But,
I mean, I think over time, a lot of us, I mean, I would say for myself personally, but I know some of my friends do, not everyone, but I would say over time, a lot of us have become a lot more intelligent about talking about things we like and dislike in detail rather than just ranting about it, which is good. That's what we're doing here.
yeah.
You know? It's not like Time War bad, you know, we're actually going into the reasons why.
But yeah, like... So my thing with Clara is, in Series 7, she is just a bland mystery box of a character who the Doctor aggressively sexualizes and objectifies, and that's gross.
Yep.
In Series 8, they give her character, kudos there, but I cannot stand her.
Mm-hmm.
They do not have...
Do as you're told.
Like, people are like, oh, but they're trying to understand each other. They're two friends, like, trying to... That's not what I see. I see just two assholes who just won't stop fucking biting each other's faces off. It doesn't feel like their relationship grows. They lie to each other.
I know. There's that bit in bloody Listen at the end after she's done all her pretentious big old fear as a superpower speech to Little Doctor, that we apparently now know isn't the first Doctor. Or maybe it is. I don't even know. It's unclear. At least Moffat left some mystery there. But anyway, after that whole thing, and the Doctor's like, where are we, Clara? And then she's like, don't ever look where we've been. Do as you're told. You know? Bossing him around.
And then... Yeah, and, like, she doesn't really give credit where it's due. Like, the ending of Kill the Moon...
I was just before you get to Kill the Moon, I was just gonna say I think Danny Pink's frowny face is really funny.
True.
I don't do weird.
But like she spent so much of the series up to that point, you know, demanding control of the situation, where I wasn't surprised that the Doctor gave it to her. I mean, yeah, sure, him abandoning it is a bit much, but, like...
I would say...
I don't know why she's...
I really don't like Clara in Series 8, however, the fact that the Doctor is butting heads with her is at the very least bearable to some extent, whereas in Series 9, he isn't, and he's basically just her simp, and it's terrible.
Yeah, at that point, he's basically just submitted to her and to her pegging.
The only reason why it works for me in it does work for me in Faith Raven and Heaven Sent, because at the very least, if it's her dying, then I can understand that much more than just if she's, you know, if it's just normal life. But if she's actually dying, then it's like, even though I don't like the Doctor simping Clara thing, it's still him losing someone he cares about, which I can still relate to it to an extent. It's just Hellbent ruins that when it brings it back.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think... Series 7 doesn't do a good job establishing Clara. Series 8 doesn't do a good job making me care about Clara. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Series 9 does either, because, like, yeah, sure, they're finally being buddy-buddy, but they're barely together. Stories like The Witch's Familiar.
Also, I could be wrong about this, but there's a shift with Jenna Coleman between Series 8 and 9, and in Series 9 her acting is a lot colder, and she doesn't look like she's having as much fun as she was.
Yeah.
Like, I remember my last rewatch, I did with my friends, we watched Series 8 and 9 quite close together, and I remember with Series 8 I was like, I can tell that she's having a lot of fun with this. You know, she's really quite full of energy in Series 8. And then you get to The Magician's Apprentice, and I'm like, she just looks so tired, and it's almost like it looks like she's doing it as a job, not because she wants to. And it's almost like it's almost like she's doing it because Stephen Moffat asked her to. You know? It's
a bit like Tom Baker in season 18.
Well, at the very least, that does actually accidentally fit his character arc in that season, so it kind of works in that way. But yeah, she's quite cold in that.
But yeah, I don't think, because those stories separate them so much, and it's hard to really get a feel for their like Girl Who Died is the only one where I really feel like, like properly feel like, right, they've got their bond sorted out, and they're actually really close pals.
It's the only thing I like about that episode is that.
Yeah, Girl Who Died sucks otherwise.
Yeah.
But yeah, other stories, they just keep them apart, and it's hard to get a feel for their chemistry and whether or not they've gotten better and to care about them, because they're talking, because Clara's with Missy in one story, and then they're talking over the phone in the other and bickering, and then she's a Zygon.
Yeah, and then in Sleep No More, it's not even from their point of view.
And it's hard to tell what they're even doing anyway, because Sleep No More is unwatchable.
Yeah, it's just like, it's almost like Clara didn't even need to be in Series 9, you know? I've always thought that there is, because you know how Clara was there for 3 seasons, I feel like you could have chopped one of those off, and there's a way you could do it. The way I would have done it is, I would have either had it that after the Angels take Manhattan, or even, actually, no, scrap that, because I would have had Amy and Rory leaving the Guard Complex, because that's way better. But I would have had Series 7, I would have had River Song be the companion in that whole series. That would have made more sense to me. Because it's like, if they're going to get married, you might as well have them be together for a whole series. You know? And
in The Angels Take Manhattan, the Doctor did say, travel with me then.
Yeah.
And then River was
she was like, nah. But I think that would have made sense. And if you're going to have... And then what would then happen is that you would then have Clara join for Capaldi's first 2 seasons. The other alternative is that you have Clara end in Death in Heaven or Last Christmas or whatever. And then in
5 million endings.
Yeah, and then in Series 9, what you could have done is you could have had Missy be the companion. And then you could have... What Moffat did in Series 10 with the whole redemption thing. What if... in Series 9, he attempted a sort of back and forth, sort of like, is the Master or is the Master not going to become an actual companion, or is the Master just going to be the Master? And then imagine if what happened in Face the Raven and Heaven Sent, instead of it being Clara, what if it was the Master? And then in Heaven Sent, he's grieving the death of the Master.
It's an idea.
You could have done that. I mean, to be fair, Face the Raven in terms of Clara's death fits her character arc more, but you could have reworked it. I don't know. It's just an idea I have.
Magician's Apprentice kind of does that idea. Like, will the Master be a companion? Because, she basically is for most of that story, and then at the very end she's like, let's kill Clara!
Oh, God. Oh, I hate that story so much.
Same. I don't know why people like, it's so profound. Like, Capaldi deserves an Oscar, and Davros is opening his eyes, and like, it's so meaningful, and they just gloss over the fact.
No, that story is just anti-fan wank. It's all it is.
And they just gloss over the fact that they pretty much negate all the character drama by revealing that they were both lying, but,
I can't stand Series 9 and how just every story, it's like, oh, we have to subvert the bloody plot, because that'll surprise people. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Dark Water, Last Christmas, and The Magician's Apprentice are just unforgivable trilogy. Terrible. Terrible.
I mean, In the Forest of the Shite comes right before that as well.
Oh, God. Dear Lord.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, so I don't think they do a good job making me care about Clara, but, some people like her, so whatever.
But I think the fact that she's so tied to Gallifrey is one of her biggest problems, and if that wasn't a factor, if Stephen Moffat had never brought back Gallifrey and she wasn't that tied to it, and if in Name of the Doctor she wasn't bloody there when the first Doctor chose his TARDIS, for God's sake. If she wasn't so tied to Gallifrey, it would remove a lot of the issues, I think. She would still be a problematic character, but it wouldn't be as bad as it is for me.
Because I get why Hellbent brings Clara back, and from a character's perspective, I think Hellbent is fairly well written, again, if you like Clara. But, like, because, I get that they're pushing each other to extremes, and, they're trying to out-doctor each other, basically.
I just can't stand the fact that Moffat once again is like, nope, everyone lives. You can't have a character die. especially because I
Yeah.
really like her death in Phase 3, but I think it actually fits her character, like the whole her becoming so overconfident that she thinks she's gonna become like the Doctor and then dies for it. I think is a really interesting
conceptually.
consequence. It's just that it then reverses and it's like, no, she is like the Doctor. She's exactly like the Doctor. She gets her own TARDIS and she gets her own companion and she's invincible. And it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, why? Why would you do this?
A new companion to Peg.
Ugh.
But yeah, like when you big up Gallifrey returning like that and make it like a mission statement, and then be like, nah, Clara. It's like, again, the hybrids. You could have begun Series 9. The Doctor could have heard about the hybrid anywhere. He could have heard about it on Earth. He could have heard about it on Skaro. I mean, he did, but like it doesn't have to be a thing from like the origin, the thing that made him start running, sort of thing, because that doesn't really tie into it. That doesn't tie into anything.
Especially because the war games give us reason enough. It didn't need to be beyond that. Like, him being bored of Gallifrey just makes sense, and you don't need to convolute it, you know?
Yeah, like, he could have... It honestly, like, distracts... It's... what's the word I'm looking for? It's self-sabotaging, basically, because if the hybrid... If he'd have heard about the hybrid on just some other random planet, we would be fully... and then he subverts it for the Clara thing, that would be fine, because, you know, who cares? It's just some random planet. When it's Gallifrey, a planet which you have, like, signposted as, yeah, we're going to give so much attention to it, all this previous lore that we've piled onto it, and all this mystique and all the emotions the Doctor's been feeling for so many years, and all the people on Gallifrey, like Romana might be there, and Leela might be there, and, you know, whoever else might be there. We might get to see them again. Well, he didn't say that, but, you know, the possibilities are there. And you big it up, and you tie the hybrid to that, and then subvert it. It does distract. It... Because, yeah... I can't explain it.
Yeah. So, basically, yeah, that's the Steve Moffat era is pretty much, for me, where the Time War goes south in the show. And then you get Chris Chibnall, who in Series 12 decided to... I think in another video in this Advent Calendar, I did a video about reset buttons with Lord Slar and Zach Rosenfeld, and we called what Moffat did in Day of the Doctor, like, it's kind of like a reset button for the Time War, and then we called what Chris Chibnall did in Spyfall to Gallifrey the unreset button, where he destroyed it again.
Yeah, and Timeless Children, it's... I'm very, very mixed on Chip. Like, I think I give Moffat a lot of shit. I'm fast approaching giving Chibnall the same amount of shit. Because it's... On the one hand, he did get rid of the Time Lords and Gallifrey again. Good, because I don't want it. Because after Moffat basically jingled his keys in our faces and was like, yeah, we're not doing that. Character drama, Clara, this character you don't care about.
Yeah.
The problem, at that point, I'm just like...
The problem I have with it is it's kind of like when you break a bone and then someone comes along and says, oh, I'll fix it by trying to break it the other way, and then you just make it worse. It's kind of what happened with Chris Chibnall. He tried to fix it by pushing the bone back in the other way, and it just broke backwards.
Yeah. I mean, granted, I do like... Because I don't like Missy or her redemption arc, so I'm kind of glad that he makes the Master go full renegade again.
And I think Big Finish has given a whole, like, there's like an in-between story about Missy and how she turned into the Sacha Master, so canon's all linked now, I suppose.
Oh yeah, well, Big Finish is something we'll have to get into after this, because they're a whole other beast.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think that Chris Chibnall is a very boring writer, and I'm not just talking about like episodes being sluggish or dialogue being stale, you know, bad humor and stuff like that. what I mean by that in specific regard to like Gallifrey and the Time War is he took like the Doctor as a character is quite different to a lot of other characters that you see in fiction, and he took the Doctor with the Timeless Child story arc and sort of he just made Gallifrey like any other lore you've ever seen. It's all so cliche, you know? Ironically, considering that's exactly what he said to Pip and Jane Baker about the ultimate foe and Terror of the Vervoids. It's just so cliche. It's like the Doctor was the Adam and Eve of Gallifrey and the Time Lords, and she's the reason why it all exists. And it's like, oh, we've seen this so many times before. You know, it's like she's the chosen one.
I am very, very like Chibnall as a writer and his era is so polarizing. Like there are some stories which are like phenomenal. They are so like rich in character development and details. Like take Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. I think that's a really great story. It's a really interesting story that you know it's tailored to the 13th Doctor.
Do you know why? But do you know why I think that the historicals were are the more popular ones in the Chibnall era? It's because Chris Chibnall doesn't really have a creative bone in his body, and so when he works best is when someone else gives him an idea, and the historicals already have an inbuilt idea to work with.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with Torchwood. Like Russell T Davies basically gave him most of the ideas to work with. And again, like Broadchurch, a lot of people say it's the kind of crime drama you've seen before, but Chibnall kind of changes it a little bit. You know, he's not very original. It's why a lot of in series 11, a lot of his actual original ideas just aren't very interesting. You know, like Tim Shaw, it's like he's a man with teeth on his face and he turns his head. You know?
Yeah. But yeah, the stories, like, they flip so much between being, like, really, like, investing and just really I watched Ascension of the Cybermen the other day. It's one of the most passionless stories I've ever seen.
Yeah, there's nothing interesting about it. It's just...
You're in a cyber war! Like, that should be really interesting. And then he just... There is no passion there. He just treats it as whatever. Let's get the pawns.
I know. Like I was if you compare it to another very action-heavy episode like Voyage of the Damned, a lot of Voyage of the Damned has a lot of like character dialogue in it, like with the Doctor and Astrid and all the people on the ship, like Banner Cavallata and Clive Swift's character and all that. They're all, you know, you get to know these people and they have interactions and there's comedy and it's like. And you get these like connections between them, and you understand who they are, and it's all fleshed out, and it's full of fun, and you know, it's all about personality. And then you watch Ascension of the Cybermen, and all the side characters have absolutely no personality. There's no character traits. There's just nothing. It's just they're just spitting dialogue about what they're doing. They're talking about the tech on the spaceship. It's just fucking awful. I can't stand it.
The only one I remember is like I just watched it the other day, and the only one with any semblance of presence is the one who like Graham is assumably going to get with, the one with the terrible eyeliner.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, she did the Billy Piper like bottle of mascara approach from Love and Monsters and Satan Pit.
But yeah, we get to the Timeless Children. Because getting rid of Gallifrey, good. I don't really want to see it again. But then let's set the Timeless Child. I had no idea the Timeless Child was going to be like an actual arc. When it's brought up in the Ghost Monument, it just sounds like enigmatic shite, like the oncoming storm. And I was such a lonely childhood, like Renette says in Girl in the Fireplace.
Some people are like, oh, it's going to be Susan. It's going to be Susan. It's always going to be Susan.
Fucking Susan.
Remember when people thought Maisie Williams was Susan?
Should have been the Rani.
Yeah. Although I think the Rani's kind of a redundant character now, because it's like the whole point of the Rani in Classic Who, it's like, oh, what if the Master was a woman? Whereas now it's like the Master's actually being a woman.
Yeah, that's true. Rip Rani.
The Rani is the Rani is a product of non-progressive times.
But yeah, like, so to suddenly turn the Timeless Child into an arc, apparently this was the plan all the time, but I didn't get that memo. it's like, okay, fine, and then we'll go to Gallifrey and figure out what it is. Oh god.
Well, the thing I hate the most about the Timeless Children is that this massive thing gets revealed, and then the Doctor's like, "Nah, it doesn't matter. So it's not going to change who I am." And she's just the same person she was. I'm like, whoa, what was the point?
Yeah. So
this kind of exactly exemplifies what's different about someone like Russell T Davies and Chris Chibnall, is that Russell T Davies, the Time War exists so that he can create character drama out of it, whereas with Chris Chibnall, he uses lore to tell a story, but the character drama doesn't happen. He Chris Chibnall thinks that the lore itself is the story, whereas Russell T Davies, the lore itself isn't the story. The lore is the launch pad for the story. You know?
Yeah. And so I rewatched Fugitive of the Jadoon as well, and like the difference between the character, like the 9th Doctor's angst compared to the 13th Doctor's angst about Gallifrey being destroyed, it's so laughably there's such a laughable gap. Like, you genuinely believe Eccleston, the 9th Doctor, is like.
Well, I mean, there's that scene in The End of the World when Jabe like holds his arm, you know?
Yeah. And then you get to like Future of the Jadoon. It's like, I don't want to talk about it. Oh wait, I went to Gallifrey. Yes, it's like, Doctor, why don't you talk to us? No.
It's so childish, you know.
But, like, because I
live for thousands of years. You don't know who I am. I don't even know who I am. and then
like,
then they're like, "We're here for you. We're your family."
Hey, Doc, I have a Sony cheese. Like, it's not Jodie's fault, but like, there's something about it that just doesn't sell it. It doesn't feel like she's mourning. It just feels like she's throwing a strop. And then she like becomes so unlikable during the course of series 12 because it's just her angst is so poorly done.
It's so like superficial, isn't it?
Yeah, like that rant she has at Ryan at the end of Haunting of Villa Diodati. Like, I get his suggestion was stupid, but like that.
See, again, that scene would have worked so much better if the character drama had been built up to that point naturally. Like if her snapping at him was believable, then it would have been really good. It's just that when she snaps, I'm like, this is a good scene by itself, but it doesn't make sense why she's so angry at him. Like, it just happens because the script told you it's going to happen, you know? Yeah,
I don't think a big egotistical Tennant rage on really suits the 13th Doctor.
It's like imagine if imagine if like the Time Lord Victoria scene from What Is a Mars happened in series 12. You would have just been like, what the hell is going on here? This makes no sense.
Actually, the Lords of Time are mine, Graham.
And they will obey me. Yeah, see, because you have to build up to these things. They have to be believable, you know?
Yeah. So then we get we get the Timeless Child, and then we go back to Gallifrey, and it's like, why are we here? You blew the place up. Why are we still hanging around this godforsaken place? and then bless Sacha Dhawan, he is easily the best thing about the Timeless Children. He's the one thing saves the story for me.
Apart from the Daffy Duck bit, that was a bit weird. You know, when he absorbs the Cyberium and he goes,
oh yeah. But yeah, like, bless him, but he just goes on this really embarrassing, like, oh yes, we fought in the Panopticon, and remember the Shabogans, which I had. Again, I'm not keen on the Deadly Assassin, so I do not fucking remember what a Shabogan is. I was like, what the hell? Okay. And it's just so, like, who in the general audience is going to give a shit about this?
Yeah.
And I know some people, like, you'd think that, but some people, I spoke to a close friend of mine who's only seen Yoo-Hoo, and they liked it quite a lot. It's like, well, but it's cringy, okay?
I will say that even though I'm critical of the Sacha Dhawan silly moments, because I like John Sim being silly, I can understand why someone would like Sacha Dhawan being silly. It's just a taste of like comedy, I suppose. You know?
Yeah, they're both I like them both, Sim and Dawn. They're both pretty.
I mean, I would take personally. I much prefer, Sacha Darwin acting like Daffy Duck or John Sim like saying dinner time than bloody Missy trying to rape the Doctor in Dark Water.
Oh god, that's so tonally off. You've just established that you're in basically a morgue. There are like skeletons.
It's not just a morgue. It's not just a morgue. It's the bloody afterlife.
Yeah, and like you've set this really creepy scene, this like funeral macabre scene, and then Missy's like, "Doctor," and
I've said this.
Let's make out.
I've said this a lot lately. Like every time I mention that in Dark Water they go to the afterlife, I can't believe what I'm saying. It's just so surreal. The fact that there's a story where they actually go to the afterlife. I think that's when the Doctor simping stuff starts, because Danny Pink dies and the Doctor's like, "Oh, you don't think I'd care about you enough to do this or whatever?" It's like,
oh, I feel like I'm one of the few people on this planet who despises that line.
Oh no, you're not the only one.
It's like, yes, I'll let you walk all over me, Clara, because
no.
I'm in awe of your massive strap-on.
No, because I understand what the scene is trying to be. The problem is, the context is, he's taking her to the goddamn afterlife.
Yeah, she's not in a fit state for this. She is, like, clearly grieving, and the Doctor's like, "Sure, come on an adventure about death. You're totally, like, in the fit mental state to do this. You're not going to be rash and make terrible decisions."
Oh, dear. Anyway, so we've rambled on about Moffat and Chibnall. Do you want to say anything else about them before we move on to the next bit?
It's a big PowerPoint presentation, and it's not very interesting, and Tectone is boring as fuck.
Doctor Who and the slideshow of death.
And then she blows up. Does she blow up Gallifrey? She wipes out all organic life or something, because Ash had the death particle, and then I can safely say that bringing back Gallifrey was totally not fucking worth it.
I mean, the end of the Timeless Children is literally just a copy and paste of the end of the Parting of the Ways, but without any of the substance or any of the build-up.
Yeah.
Like the Master is the Emperor Dalek, the Doctor is the Doctor, and then the bomb she has, the particle, is the Delta Wave, and then fucking Barristan Selmy from Game of Thrones is Bad Wolf.
Yeah,
but it
kind of is.
But it doesn't have any of the good stuff in it. It only has the bone structure of that plot. Copy and paste.
The only good thing about that scene is Sacha Dhawan like being really close to her hand, going, "Go on, Doctor, do it."
Oh man,
sounds like he's getting off.
Yeah, man, that would have been. Imagine if that had been a 10th Doctor story. just like a bunch of rabid dogs going, "Come on, you're gonna do it."
Oh, you want me to do it? Yeah, I want you to do it. Yeah, you want me to?
It makes me think of that scene. It makes me think of that scene in End of Time when John Sim puts his head against the Doctor and he hears the drums. Oh my god, it's real! It's real!
But yeah, that whole Day of the Doctor hell-bent timeless child shit is so not worth bringing back Gallifrey for.
Definitely not. And selling on all that beautiful stuff we got in the Davies era, you know? It's just...
I kind of wish I could become Clara herself so I can, like, go back in time and tell Moffat to fucking not.
Yeah.
And then we get to Big Finish, who now have the license to Time War content, and they have now proceeded to make it the most boring, most run-of-the-mill generic. I mean, granted, I've only heard 2 of the War Doctor sets and like a couple of 8th Doctor things.
Yeah, so I've heard 5 War Doctor stories. I haven't quite got through Infernal Devices, but I've heard all of the first one and 2 of the second one. And apart from that, I'm not 100% sure what from the Time War I have heard, but I am aware of a lot of the stuff that's in it. I obviously know about the 8th Doctor Time War set. I know about the Gallifrey Time War set. I know about
The War Master.
the War. Oh yeah, no.
Susan.
Actually, no. I have listened to the War Master. I've listened to the first 2 War Master sets. I actually really like those, especially the second one.
Okay, yeah. The War Master is good.
I haven't heard Rage of the Time Lords or Anti-Genesis yet, though, and apparently those go a bit fan wanky. But the Master of Callus is bloody brilliant, and the thing is what's great about it is, like you've said about Gallifrey kind of being the antithesis of what Doctor Who's meant to be, is that the Master of Callus, even though it's set within the Time War, has absolutely nothing to do with the Time War, really. Like, apart from the fact that it's, like with Russell T Davies, it's the launching pad for the plot. It's the reason why the plot exists, but it's not the plot itself. The planet of Callus, the whole reason they're mining the, whatever it's called, I can't remember what the material's called, is so that they can, build ships for the war, and then, spoilers, I won't say what happens at the end, but...
Yeah,
like,
I've only heard the first set.
But it's like, the whole drive behind it is that the Time War is the reason why the plot is happening, but the plot, apart from that, has absolutely nothing to do with it, and it's so good. And then, so, that's...
I've heard the first... You go first. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I also like the first set as well. I think it's not as consistent as the Master of Callus, because I think the only real standout for me from that one is the Skyman. The other 3, Skyman's brilliant. The other 3 are good, but they're not as good as the Skyman.
That twist, the twist in the Skyman, they become Cybermen, I think. It's definitely the implication.
But yeah, the War Master, I think, from what I've heard, is the best thing to come out of the Time War Big Finish stuff for me. I haven't listened yet, but I haven't listened to Susan's War. I haven't listened to the 8th Doctor Time War stuff yet. I have it, but I haven't listened to it yet, and I haven't listened to the second half of the War Doctor either.
I've heard the first War Master set and the final War Master set, because Leela, she's bae, and those classic Doctor's New Monsters sets, they have a couple of 8th Doctor stories in the Time War, and that's kind of it. But I've also listened to Dark Eyes and Doom Coalition, which are kind of the lead up to the Time War in a sense, because they try and heighten the scandals and the political drama of Gallifrey, because all that stuff, and I think it's just so tedious. It's like, okay, we get it, we get what this is leading to. It's not really that exciting.
You know what's really interesting though is that there was the Dalek Empire 4 stories they did in the early Big Finish before New Who started, and it was very Time War.
Mutant Phase,
Genocide Machine, Apocalypse Element, and Time of the Daleks. And Apocalypse Element is very Time War. It's a Dalek story on Gallifrey.
Didn't Russell confirm in some interview or something that it's canon and is one of the main starting points of the Time War or something?
Yes.
I don't know where I heard that.
Yes, but again, I feel like that's literally just a coincidence. He's just that makes sense. I'm gonna...
Right.
I would actually, to be fair though, it is possible that his idea for the Time War may have been him thinking about when Genesis of the Daleks, you look at all the Davros stories after that, and then also listening to the Big Finish, because I know that Russell did. His ideas for the Time War may have stemmed from all those stories. It's quite possible, if you know what I'm saying.
Covered Skaro, the whole mess that is. Is it? How did it? Is it destroyed? Is it not okay?
Oh yeah.
I just thought about that because it's in Remembrance, and Remembrance is also cited as an instigator for the Time War.
Yeah, because Skaro gets destroyed, and then isn't it in the Moffat era they rebuild the planet?
It's in Daleks in Manhattan. One of the Daleks, Thay, he said it's destroyed in the Time War, which I guess you could argue is Remembrance.
Yeah, if you want to stretch that, really. Yeah.
And then Victory's we will go to Skaro and rebuild it! And then City of the Daleks, that adventure game happens, and it's just rebuilt. And the Doctor's really like not giving a fuck about it. It's like, oh, whatever, it's rebuilt because Matt Smith sounds so fucking bored in those games.
Yeah, but it's weird because it's kind of enjoyable to hear him be bored.
Hello, Amy. You are dying. Oh no, what can we do?
I think it's because he's in like a really small room with a mic, and it's quite adorable.
Yes, it's like there's a sleeping dog or a sleeping baby really close to him in the room, and he doesn't want to wake it.
Yeah.
Just, oh no, Amy. The Daleks are here.
Yeah, and then like they're in this like big echoey room that's like loud, and you can just hear Amy Pond going, "Doctor, there's a Dalek."
The Emperor Dalek, just the dictator I wanted to see. just ASMR, just oh no, London 1963 has been blown up and Sylvia is the only survivor. Amy, what do we do? You sound like you give a shit, man.
I'm pretty sure Phil Ford wrote those games. Which is weird. He's a fascinating writer because he did Waters of Mars with Russell T Davies, and he did Into the Dalek with Moffat, and then I think he did I think he did some Sarah Jane Adventures episodes as well.
Yeah, he did, and like Waters of Mars is an interesting story.
I think I saw your tweet,
so,
your tweet about it.
Yeah, it's a good story, but it's not my favorite kind of thing.
I can see that because you have to be very invested to like it.
I think it's because at that point, like I don't really like 10 when he's alone. It just kind of gets a bit like, okay, but where's the banter kind of thing.
What about Midnight though?
Oh, Midnight is the exception. Midnight is top tier.
Okay.
But like crap, what was I talking about? It's
Phil Ford or something?
Like, yeah, Phil Ford. Like he alternates between being very interesting, like Waters of Mars and his Sarah Jane Adventure stories, and being really generic, like Into the Dalek and those adventure games. So it's weird. But yeah, like, and then in Asylum of the Daleks, Skaro is back, and there's this big monument.
I don't really understand how they rebuilt a whole planet. Like it would. And actually, oh my god, I think I've just had a fucking light bulb here. You know that thing in End of Time, how there's that the way the Master clones himself, and like so he's everyone. That machine, the cactus people, whatever they're called, they explain that it's designed to mend whole planets. So was maybe originally in End of Time that machine was meant to be what would bring Skaro back? If I just
cool idea.
If I just figure this out, the whole point of that machine was that it was meant to bring Skaro back. And then
I mean, it would make more sense than them just going back into the Time War because it's time locked. Then again, Dalek Khan manages it, so whatever.
The Doctor is coming.
I like that Dalek Khan goes back into the Time War and the Doctor makes a big deal. It's time locked, and then like assumedly the paradigm goes back to save Skaro, even though it's time locked, and then Dave the Doctor they go back even though it's time locked. So basically, a time lock is really fucking flimsy. And
yeah, I really like the Cult of Skaro arc in the Tennant era, and then it's only once you get to Moffat era that the Daleks just Christ, I can't stand the Daleks in the Moffat era.
Yeah,
I mean, Into the Dalek, to be fair, isn't that bad, but the Daleks are all right. But it's mainly Victory Asylum and Magician's Apprentice that's like
they don't kill anyone, and they're so thick.
Yeah, what was
literally and like physically and mentally.
What was the point of bringing back the special weapons Dalek for 2 stories and for it to not do anything?
But in one of them it talks, so that's totally satisfying.
It's terrible.
And then Skaro is back in the Magician's Apprentice, and they treat it as this terrifying reveal. Like, oh no, they rebuilt it. It's like, yeah, we know. You were there. Mm-hmm. Like, hello? Ugh.
And they're like, oh, it's a classic Dalek from the Daleks. Ugh. Be scared of fan service. And then Moffat's like, oh, now the casing is the reason they say exterminate. It's like, oh no, no.
And people insist that, it's terrible.
Just pissing on Terry Nation's grave. Although, to be fair, Terry Nation kind of did that anyway, but... what were we going to say?
We kind of went off on a tangent. Like, we were talking about Big Finish, then we talked about Scaro, but...
Yeah. I don't have much to say about Big Finish, because I haven't heard a lot of it.
Yeah, what I've heard is just fairly generic. Like, the War Doctor sets are passable. They're not that interesting.
I think they're all right. The problem is that I'm not keen on the War Doctor as a whole. From the start.
Me neither.
And that's the main problem. I think if I sort of separate that and I treat it as if, well, what if I did like the War Doctor, then it becomes more enjoyable.
Yeah, I think it has some cool ideas in there. Like,
oh yeah, I love all the weapons they come up with. Like all the crazy ideas for the weapons they come up with, and John Hurt's like, "Are you mad? You can't be running around with these weapons." It's really
in the fourth set. Like something happens to Leela. Like something happened to her in one of the former Gallifrey sets, and then she came back and she's like, some weird like timey thing has happened to her, and she sees like her life across different time. It's a bit like what happened with Amy, where she can like remember 2 events of her life. It was like that with Leela, and like she could like see all the different possibilities of her life. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. But
there's a thing they do in the second War Doctor set it's like what they do with Clara and Hellbent, but way better.
Right.
But because it's like it actually makes sense. It's like they are building this thing where you can. You're in the middle of a war, and it's actually, funnily enough, it's almost a bit like the Doctor's daughter in a way, but not. It's not like a spawning thing. It's more so like they have these machines where they can extract dead soldiers from time and bring them back, and then they can fight again. It's like these...
Oh, is that Legion of the Lost?
Yeah, Legion of the Lost.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, and they just keep on fighting and dying, and they bring them back, and then they die again. And the whole idea is that they keep bringing them back, and also it's not like for free. Like there is a cost to bringing them back as well. Like there's a consequence to it. And it's like it's an interesting thing. It's like they keep bringing back these people to die in the war so they can try and win. And it's like this constant cycle of these people being brought back and dying again, which is much better than what they did in Hellbent with Clara, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Whereas like one heartbeat before her death, she comes back and she's invincible.
Yeah, but like they have interesting ideas, but the stories themselves, they're just kind of standard, bog standard. Like I haven't heard the first Eighth Doctor set, but I have heard that there's.
The problem I have is that with Big Finish sometimes is they have these really ambitious ideas for what they can do, and then you listen to them and it's like, oh no, this just feels like any other Doctor Who. I had that a little bit with the Divergent arc as well, with stories like the Twilight Kingdom. It's like you could literally
just in a cave.
Yeah, you could literally just do this. This just feels like any random classic Who story. It doesn't feel like it's in part of the Divergent arc. It's really weird.
Yeah, like I've not listened to the first Eighth Doctor Time War set, but I've heard that there's a story in it called Starship of Theseus. I don't know if you want spoilers or anything.
Try to avoid major spoilers if you can, because I do intend on listening to them at some point.
Okay, well, like there's one story, Starship of Theseus, which has a really interesting concept where like it's based around the idea of if you take a broom and then replace the brush on the end, and then later on you replace the stick, is it the same broom? It's sort of like based around that, but applies it to like the effects of the Time War.
Isn't that something I've heard? Isn't that like a bit of dialogue and deep breath? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it is. I was thinking about it just as I was saying it.
Yeah.
So it's sort of based around that, and that sounds interesting. But then in the same box set, there's another story where the Eighth Doctor is recruited into like the barracks or something, and then he's like being trained to be a soldier, and it's like a generic like baby's first war recruitment film or something, and it sounds really generic. So it's like they're all over the place with the Time War, and either way, it's demystifying.
I have heard though. Apparently, there's a story from the fourth set by John Dorney called Palindrome with Davros in it, and it's brilliant. That's what I've heard, but I haven't listened to it.
That's I think I've read up about that. But yeah, like exploring the Time War this thoroughly does completely just ruin the mystique that Russell Zero was going for. And, you know, I guess it is inevitable that they would try exploring it, but it's still blah. Shoehorning everyone and their mother into it.
I mean, Susan's War is just jumping the shark, isn't it?
The War Valeyard is in one.
Oh yeah, the War Valeyard, what the hell?
And now, not even like John Hurt's passing is going to stop them from doing more War Doctor stuff.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Even the bloody first Doctor is involved, and the fifth. Like, they will stop at nothing. Like, they had it in one Companion Chronicles set or whatever, where like the Daleks are trying to like get rid of the Doctor, so they go back and like alter the first Doctor's regeneration or something. Like, why are you doing this? And like, I hate that really annoys me. Like, the fifth Doctor enters the Time War as well. 11 and 12 and now 13 are still dealing with the Time War. The eighth Doctor's, like, half of the eighth Doctor's life is now building up to the Time War. The seventh Doctor knows that the Time War is coming. I really hate that Doctor Who lore has now retroactively just become the Time War show or the Time War franchise. Doctor Who is so much more than that.
Yeah, that's true. And like, you know, I feel like that's why the next showrunner after Chibnall, you need to get someone like Philip Hinchcliffe who isn't a fan of the show and just tells good stories in a sci-fi setting and has none of this baggage. Because that's what I thought that Chris Chibnall was going to do, and then Series 12 happened.
Yeah, it's such a backflip. And like... Oh, and Time Lord Victorious as well. Oh... They're fighting a whole new Time War.
Yeah.
This franchise doesn't have enough of that.
Yeah, it's a shame, because it's weird though, because I've heard a lot of people say that it's really good, but it's like, again, it's like it's just doing another Time War, you know?
And like, Doctor Who can do so much more than that. Like, the Divergent Universe arc.
Yeah, and also like, with the 10th Doctor Adventures, right? It's like, we obviously got set one with Donna, then you got one with Rose, then one with Donna and her family, and then the fourth one was with River Song. And I was like, okay, hopefully the one after that is going to be one with Martha Jones, because I really want to hear like a 10th Doctor set with Martha Jones. They're like, nope. Same. It's going to be one called Dalek Universe, and it's going to be like the Time War again. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yes, going to meet all of Terry Nation's creations, but with the 10th Doctor, that totally won't be jarring. Because I feel like, I said this, I think, like a month ago on Twitter, I feel like some Doctors just aren't built for that level of fan service, and I think 10 is, like, one of them. He's not built for meeting mechanoids and being like, oh, yes, I remember the chase.
Well, I think it's because the 10th Doctor's character is very much built into the TV show. It's all like, the entire purpose of the character is all ingrained in this character arc that Russell T Davies made. And then when you take him out of that, and you have to remove that, he's not as good, I think, which is really, you know, a lot of people might be surprised me saying that because he's my favourite Doctor, but it's true. When you remove the 10th Doctor from the TV show, he's not the same. And when you're having to create these new things on the side with Big Finish, it's like, well, this doesn't really fit. This isn't what the TV show intended. And it's different because with Classic Who, because the show was a lot more serialized and the Doctor was very much like, it was all very much week to week, well, not week to week, but like story to story. They were, you know, it was the Doctor's character. And it's kind of like, when you bring them into Big Finish, it's like you get the same thing again. You get a brand new story with a Doctor that you already know, and you get the same thing again. Whereas with David Tennant, you can't do that, because in his actual episodes on TV, it deals with stuff that's set in stone as like a character drama, and if you do it again in Big Finish, it's like, well, you've just added another piece to this puzzle that you didn't need to do. So all you can do is add his surface level personality which isn't enough to fulfill what
Yeah.
people liked about the 10th Doctor on TV. You get what I'm saying? And this is why when they do the 9th Doctor adventures, because they will next year starting, it's like you're now at a crossroads, because it's like, if you don't involve his grief over the Time War, you're not fulfilling the character on TV, right? You're not actually doing what the character was and what people liked about it. But then if you do that, you're barking up a tree that's already been written, you know?
I'm really trying to imagine the 9th Doctor without the Time War. Like, what would that look like?
I suppose it would be like the comedy scenes in Boomtown without the dinner.
Yeah, like, it's like, all I can imagine is this kind of neutered 9th Doctor who just, it's weird. Such a weird mental image.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the consequence of the fact that the TV show, Russell T Davies made the Time War such an integral part of the character, and in Big Finish you don't want to mess with that because it's already set in stone in the show, and so you have to strip it back, and by stripping it back you lose the best parts of the character, you know?
Don't worry, I'm sure they'll have him meet the Master or River Song or
The Cybermen.
bloody...
God, the 9th Doctor, the River Song, I don't want that.
Hello, sweetie.
Hello?
Want some of this?
Hello?
Do I know you? Oh, I like how in the Eternity Clock, the video game, like, you can collect River's diary pieces, and for the 9th Doctor, it says he hated her because she brought up the Time War. Like, she hit not a soft spot, but like, she hit a nerve and that pissed him off. And she got out of there quickly. It's like, yeah, stay away from him, you hoe.
God. It's like, I don't like this whole thing. I don't know if it's Moffat's fault or if it's like Big Finish's fault, but I don't like the whole like suggestion. It's like, oh, she's like ticking off, like, you know, she wants to shag all the different incarnations. And it's like, oh.
You just know when Big Finish eventually get the rights to the Chibnall era and to explore all the timeless Doctor incarnations, she is gonna be in that. She is gonna bang Ruth. She is gonna she'll be in the Division. I'm surprised they haven't done a David Bradley set with her yet.
Oh, God.
Oh no, I've just given them that idea.
Oh no. And then he'll be really sexist to her.
Who are you, my dear? Oh wait, he doesn't go.
No, he doesn't. God. And if Stephen Moffat was writing it, it'd be like, "Oh, we're all women are made of glass in a way."
Oh, that's terrible.
Honestly, Twice Upon a Time is one of those episodes that could be deleted and nothing would change. Like all you have to do is you just have to put the regeneration scene at the end of the Doctor Falls, and nothing would change. If you think of
the character drama that 12 totally has in that story.
Oh God! If your heart's in the right place and the stars are too, children can hear your name.
When people talk about that fucking speech and they're like, wow, it's so, like, this is exactly the same as all those other fucking speeches. Who cares?
When you fire that first shot, you don't know who's going to die.
The man who stops the monsters. I name you the Boners.
Fingers on buzzers. And when it's at like at the start of the pyramid at the end of the world, he's like, "What is the meaning of life?" Or something like that.
The magic haddock. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. According to all known laws of aviation, it is mathematically impossible for a bee to fly.
Oh yeah, that's right. I watched Listen last night, and he's just like, "What if there was a monster that you could have never seen, and you wouldn't even know it existed because you'd never find it?" And he goes like on some David Attenborough adventure, looking at like tigers fighting in some bloody, what are those fish called? The
pufferfish.
Pufferfish, yeah.
Yeah, why is he like, yes, there is such thing as perfect hunting, but where's perfect hiding? It's like, there are chameleons, dude.
Why is he sitting on top of the TARDIS and then the camera pads up and he says, "Listen"?
Yeah, who's he saying that to?
I don't know. It's so weird. Like,
I know Tom Baker broke the fourth wall all the time, but
yeah.
that's no.
Yes.
But yeah, have we covered the Time War? It's how they've just butchered it ever since 2010.
Yeah, so basically, to sum it up, it worked really well as a launching pad for the Russell T Davies era, and then after that, it got abused and milked to death, and now it's a crumbling mess.
Yeah, I like what it did for 9. It's pretty good with 10. I like the villains motivation it gave us, like the Master and Davros and all that stuff. And then, things just get iffy from there. And now Gallifrey is back to be the boring background setting for boring series arcs. And I swear to God, if it continues to stick around, I think that's the end of Gallifrey, honestly. I don't think it will come back because she's wiped out all organic. What's the point? But, still lame.
Oh, God, it's just... I think I heard an interview with Russell T Davies around the Day of the Doctor when someone asked him, like, oh, how do you feel about what Moffat's done to Gallifrey? And he's just like, well, it's not my show anymore.
Oh, dear. It's such a shame.
I know. Moffat just very easily could have just been like, no, we're just gonna forget about it. We're gonna move on and not touch it anymore. And he
did that for 3 seasons and then decided to not do that, and now, oh dear, so dumb.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
I remember, I think I made a tweet really, really early in January, I do not want to see Gallifrey, let's just pretend Hellbent never happened. And then Spyfall Part 2 aired 2 days later.
Yep, and then we got the Timeless Children, which is it's kind of Chris Chibnall's equivalent to Hellbent. In a lot of ways.
Those two men just need to... someone needs to scold them for their crimes against good Doctor Who.
Honestly, I remember when I was a kid, I really didn't like 82. But ever since Moffat and Chibnall have got their hands on the show, I actually quite like the 80s now, because the bar's been lowered by what they've done to it.
82 is at least camp, and you can...
Well, I was talking about in the Reset Button videos about one thing that I really like about the 80s is the stories actually feel consequential. There's in the Davison era, there's a lot of
Adric, yeah.
examples of not just Adric, but side casts dying and it having an effect on the Doctor. And then, of course, in the Colin Baker era, it's extremely violent, and again, there's a lot of death. And then in the McCoy era, whilst it's not as direct in that regard, it is obviously, there's a lot of, it's quite consequential in terms of its themes, I suppose you could say, especially in later on. But the thing is, with Stephen Moffat, it's all about everyone lives. You look at bloody Rory Williams and how many times he dies and comes back, and then with Clara and God, even Bill Potts. Series 10 is by far my favorite Moffat series, but again,
yeah, same.
He just couldn't let Bill Potts die. He couldn't do it. He had to bring it back.
Moffat's all about everything has to connect.
Yeah, and you know what? The end of The Doctor Falls is almost acceptable if they had made it like the Forest of the Dead ending, where it's it's a sort of afterlife where her becoming a Cyberman, and then to not traumatize the children watching the show, Heather takes her to an afterlife, a bit like Astrid in Voyage of the Damned, or River in Forest of the Dead, or Danny Pink in Death in Heaven. And it's it's sort of an afterlife, but that's not what happens, because you get that line of dialogue from Heather where she's like, no, I can just bring you back to life, it's easy. And it's oh, for fuck's sake, Moffat, why'd you have to do that?
Just remove that one line, and then I would be fine with it. But
yeah, it's such a dampening detail on that story that I really like. Oh, Christ.
How how the Time War has affected the Master.
That's a good point, actually. This is a difficult one, because there's things that New Who has done to the Master that aren't actually necessarily to do with the Time War, although they kind of are. Because at first, in The Sound of Drums, the drum retcon isn't to do with the Time War, it's just Gallifreyan history, and it basically retcons Classic Who. But then in the end of time, it now becomes they did it in the Time War, to the Master.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about. I think the drums are they're a bit redundant, honestly. Like, I prefer the idea of the Master having more agency in their villainy, not just
have you
they were traumatized.
Have you listened to the Big Finish audio master?
I have, and it's good, but I think it's McCoy era.
Yeah. I had a feeling, considering it's the kind of McCoy era that you're not a big fan of, right?
Yeah, McCoy oblique. It's weird because I've talked about how I prefer the Time War to be mysterious and unknowable, and when the McCoy era is just that, I don't like it. It's weird. Would you agree that the Cartmel master plan is superior to the Timeless Child, though? Yeah, because that has more meat to it.
And like I said about comparing Davies to Chibnall, it's the same thing with Andrew Cartmel to Chibnall, in the sense of Andrew Cartmel's purpose of doing it, of adding this mystery, is to create a story out of it, whereas with the Timeless Child, Chris Chibnall treats that as the story. He treats the lore as the story, and it's not a mystery. It's him answering questions that people had. It's confirming information. It's here, something that you've been thinking about, this is the answer. The Morbius Doctors are canon, It's all that stuff. It's Tek Tayun was the other, or something like that. It's for fuck's sake, Chibnall.
Cartmel Master Plan has its dumb elements, like the Hand of Omega, and Fenric, and all these previous meetings with enemies we've never met before, but it does result in Ace's character growth, and it does add more mystery to the Doctor, even though I don't really like Seven all that much. But with Chibnall, it is very much lore, just more lore,
and it doesn't it doesn't add anything to 13, because the Cartmel Master Plan by design is meant to be part of Seven's character, whereas with the Timeless Child, it doesn't add anything to the 13th Doctor at all. She's the same person she was at the bloody beginning of the series,
It acts like it does, because, you've got all these shots of her looking sincere and broken, but it doesn't really change anything.
Not really, no. It's not character development.
I guess it adds motivation for why the Master's an evil git again, but that was always going to happen.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, though, is we're talking about, again, the Time War affecting the Master. The Timeless Child thing, it's more of an arc for the Master than it is for the Doctor.
Yeah, and I think the Master is easily the best thing about the Timeless Children.
It's very strange.
Yeah,
but
I don't think the Time War...
But in terms of the Time War affecting the Master, I think in Series 3, it's brilliant. But then once you get past that point and you get into the Moffat era, and he ends up having to, drag over all the... he has to carry over all the Davies stuff and then doesn't really know what to do with it. And sometimes ignores it and sometimes uses it. What were you going to say?
I do like what he does with Sim in Time.
Oh yeah, I do too. Yeah.
It's so weird to think about, because apparently the drums were the instigator for the Master being evil all this time. But then the drums are not there for him in The Doctor Falls, and he's still an evil git.
I think it's it's not, because the thing is with the drums is I feel like it's not necessarily the reason the Master is evil. I personally, my headcanon is that the drums and the backstory we get in the Big Finish story Master are both part of it. It's not one or the other. And I do think that the story we get in Master about I can't remember the exact details, but it's something along the lines of they
kill a child and then death. No, they kill a bully and then death like wants the Doctor because the Doctor killed that bully, but then the Doctor's like, no, have the Master instead, and then Death makes the Master her disciple or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, something like that.
Weird.
So it's almost like the way I see it is both the drums and that kind of simultaneously exist in my headcanon, and basically
that's fair enough.
And also you obviously have the agency of like not just that, but also the events that take place, like with Roger Delgado's Master and all that. And obviously with Big Finish you end up getting a bunch of stuff before that too, which we won't talk about. But
yeah,
what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so with the drums is. The whole thing about the drums is as the Master grows, it kind of gets louder and louder and louder. And one thing I actually kind of like about that is it kind of explains why, as the Masters progress from Delgado onwards, they get a bit more insane, which is kind of like I actually kind of like that in a way. It's kind of a natural reason for their sort of why he sort of transforms into sort of a Bond villain into a maniac. And then by the time you get to John Sim, he's absolutely off the walls. And one thing I like about that is that because the whole reason why the drums exists in the Davies era is because he wanted to change the Master into something that we hadn't seen before, I think. And that's why John Sim's Master is quite different from what we'd seen before. And so he basically, like, this is a character justification as to why he's changed. And then, of course, in World Enough in Time, when the Master isn't like that, Moffat decided, well, now the drums have been removed, so now he's going to be a bit more like what he was when he was Delgado, when the drums were quiet. If you know what I mean. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I get that.
What was I going to say? Oh, yes. So,
Missy.
Yes, we had Missy, and I don't know. I don't think she's really that tied to the Time War, to be fair. Thinking about it.
Yeah, not really.
I would say Sacha Darwin's Master is more affected by the Time War than Missy is.
Yeah, that's true. Although, yeah, I do like that the Master's evil again. I never liked the rebound arc, the redemption arc.
The rebound arc. I mentioned series 3, and you thought about the rebound arc.
Yeah. Now the rebound arc's way better than the redemption arc.
Oh, honestly, I think the rebound arc is one of the most underrated bits of Doctor Who, and for some reason everyone hates it, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, I do. I do know why, but I don't agree with them.
Here's an interesting question that I thought up. Do you think Ten was knowingly stringing her along, or do you think he was just oblivious?
Oblivious.
Same.
Because
some people he knew she was interested.
I think I think the moment when he knew was at the end of the Family of Blood.
Yeah,
that was when he was like, actually,
so.
I can sense what's happening here. But he'd grown so used to having her around that he didn't take her back home. And then, obviously, the power shifts with the finale, and like you get Last of the Time Lords when she leaves him. And now it's like, rather than him bringing her in, and it's like almost like she needed him to escape her troubles, it's now she leaves him and he needed her, but now she's ripped that away from him. Anyway, but yeah, no, literally at the end of Smith and Jones, Martha lies to him and says, I'm not remotely interested, and he says, good. And so that that explains why he has no hesitation to talk about Rose and Smith's Shakespeare Code, because he doesn't know that she fancies him. He's just oblivious to it. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, same. Some people act like, see, he knew all this time and he was just being a dick, and it's like, no, I don't think he was.
No, I find it believable that the Doctor, an alien, would be oblivious to the nuances of a human's, emotions that they're not telling him. I think that makes sense to me. And also, when you consider that with Rose Tyler, Russell T Davies was making it very clear that the Doctor was like starting to realize that it's not going to happen. Like, especially when you get School Reunion, where he tells her about I regenerate, I don't die, you die, and I don't want to see that happen to you. And then obviously you get in Doomsday when he wraps the necklace around her, because he's like, it's the whole thing of he doesn't want to see her die, so he wants to keep her safe and let her go now before that happens. And I think again, it's like, it's made very clear that the Doctor is not interested in having a relationship now, even though he does obviously has feelings for Rose because of how she brought him out of the Time War grief, which again ties into the whole theme of this video. He realizes that it's not realistic because, you know, the companions to him are more like how we as humans see pets. They are only a fragment of our life. They're not our whole life. And so he kind of realizes that that's not going to be realistic. But he keeps her around because it feeds him. He loves having someone with him, and having Rose with him, it hides all that grief. It distracts him from all that grief of the Time War, and then as soon as she leaves, it all comes flooding back. And that's why you get, like, you know, in stuff like The Runaway Bride and Gridlock, you get all that grief coming back again. So
I think that's when the 10th Doctor really starts to...
Oh yeah, losing
properly.
Rose Tyler is like the launch pad for his character development, I think.
Yeah, because I did say he was boring up to that point, and
You did
I
say
do get
that.
why.
You did say
I
that.
get why he's like that, because, you know, if you want someone to fall, they've got to fall from something. But yeah,
I do remember you said that. But yeah, I think it's very believable that he was oblivious about Martha until Family of Blood. Yeah, I think that's probably where I would say he started to realize, because obviously it was the very end scene where he's like, oh, all those things that you said about me, obviously it was a joke, right? You weren't being serious. I think that was probably the moment when he started to be like, I'm a bit suspicious here. I think you've been lying to me this whole time.
Yeah, I think so too.
But yeah.
So that's the Time War and some other tangents.
Yes, of course. We just filled up 2 hours of time. I'm very proud of that.
Is it that long?
It is 2 hours, yeah. Unless, of course, I edit it down, but I probably won't because I think it turned out pretty well.
Featuring such wonderful going off topics as the Silurians and the Master and Martha Jones.
Yes.
What?
And many other things.
So yes. Hopefully I made an adequate video for you.
I think you did pretty well.
Yay!
So, anything else you want to say?
I think I'm tapped out, basically.
Yeah, I think I am as well. I want to save
Your
all my
fancy outro.
I was just gonna say, I'm spoiling all of my energy that I'm meant to be putting in my Series 3 reviews I've got going on. But I'm sure I'll be able to recapture it. I'm gonna be doing tomorrow night. I think it's shit. This is coming out like 2 months after, so I probably shouldn't say because it's gonna be weird out of context. But I'm gonna be doing a couple of videos tomorrow, and there might be Series 3. If not, there'll be Torchwood Series 1. Anyway, what I was gonna say was, thank you all for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed. Leave your comments below or on Twitter what you think about the Time War, and based on some of the things we said. It's an interesting thing, I think. I think it's... the way to sum it up in a nutshell for me is, I think the Time War, in a way, it's one of the best things to ever happen to the show, but it's also one of the worst. And... yeah.
I'd agree.
So, yikes.
Hopefully you found this an interesting discussion, and yeah...
Mm-hmm. I think the solution to this would have been if Russell T Davies had been the showrunner forever. Then it would be fine.
Oh yeah, or if Moffat had just come up with a different idea for the 50th.
Yeah, you know, maybe. So do you want to plug anything or talk about anything else before we end the video?
Nah, I'm not really a plugging sort of person, but you know,
no.
that's cool.
All right then. Well, we will see
Bye, YouTube.
Yes, we will see you all tomorrow for day 11 of the Advent calendar.